It is better not to dream. When you think you've found some peace, it has been another scheme. I am better off alone without these people I outgrown. Even after being shown that Christmas is right. Please take me away from here. I can bear no more. No more.
Now, being prepared for almost anything, he was not by any means prepared for nothing. And consequently, when the bell struck 1 and no shape appeared, he was taken with a violent fit of trembling. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, a quarter of an hour went by.
Yet nothing came?
Yet nothing came.
What happened next?
Scrooge saw a ghostly light in the adjoining room. He went to the door. The moment Scrooge's hand was on the lock, the door opened, and a strange voice called him by his name and bade him enter. He obeyed.
Scrooge! Ebenezer Scrooge! Come! Come and know me better, man! I am the spirit of Christmas present.
The spirit of Christmas present.
Take hold of my robe, Ebenezer Scrooge.
Pray tell, where are we going?
Scrooge, you shall soon see.
Whatever has got your precious father and Tiny Tim? And Martha wasn't this late last year by half an hour.
Here I am.
Oh, Martha, how late you are.
There was a great deal of work to finish up with the milliners last night and a great deal of queer way this morning.
Well, you are here now, dear. Sit down and warm yourself.
God bless you.
Father's coming. Hi, Martha. Hi.
Nothing you dismay. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Where's Martha?
Oh, Martha's not going to make it home for Christmas this year, I'm afraid.
What? Not home for Christmas?
Here I
Oh, come here.
am. And how was little Tim in church this morning?
As good as gold and better. You know, he gets so thoughtful sitting there by himself. He thinks the strangest things you ever heard. Walking home, he said he hoped people saw him in the church because he was a cripple. It might be good for them to remember on Christmas Day who made lame beggars walk and blind men see. But he's getting stronger every day, I just know it.
Martha, help me with the goose.
Oh, that's such a goose. That's such a we've never had before.
It wasn't expensive at all. Look, Mother's really having herself this year. It's as big as me.
A Merry Christmas to you all, my dears. God bless us.
God bless us.
God bless this feast before us, our meat and bread. May God bless this gathering, and let no ill word be said.
God bless the roof above us.
God bless the fire.
May God find the mercies to those who love us and
God bless us. God bless us. God bless this family, one and all. God's blessed me so completely, and so I pray, having all my loved ones here upon this Christmas Day.
for all this we are thankful and thanks to give. We don't want for much, but for these loving lives we live.
God bless us.
idea Cratchit had a crippled son.
I wonder why.
Tell me, Spirit, will the boy live?
If these shadows remain unaltered by the future, the boy shall die.
No, say it isn't so. Say that he will be spared.
God bless us God bless this family
And now, my dear ones, a toast. To
Mr. Scrooge, the founder of our feast.
Founder of our feast, indeed. I wish I had him here. I'd give him a piece of my mind to feast upon, and hope he'd have an appetite for it.
my dear, the children. It's Christmas Day.
It should be Christmas when one would toast the health of such a mean, stingy, odious, hard, unfeeling man as Mr. Scrooge. And no one knows it better than you, Bob Cratchit.
My dear, have a little charity.
All right, I'll toast him. For the day's sake and for your sake, but not for his. To Mr. Scrooge, may he have a very Merry Christmas and a very Happy New Year. I'm sure he'll be very merry and very happy. To Mr. Scrooge.
To Mr. Scrooge.
Poor boy, so small and gentle, what I would give to see this child grow strong and healthy. Please, God, let him live. So young, oh, Spirit, forsake the child. Shed your mercy on this man, so gentle and well. Joy for smiling nations rise, joy for shining on the sky. Do whatever you must say to him.
What happened then?
What happened then is that all good girls and boys go to bed on Christmas Eve as they should.
Don't stop reading, Papa. I like the sound of your voice.
Very well. Unbeknownst it is, and shall remain, that Tiny Tim felt so moved by the lack of Christmas in Scrooge's heart that he did the only thing he felt he could. He simply made a Christmas wish.
Dear star, that wished upon each night, I wish for this man to find what I have found. Hidden here in this joyous season, everywhere, enough to share.
me at the time that a child's wish upon the North Star on the clearest of Christmas Eve nights would prove to procure one of the most powerful miracles of any Christmas, past, present, or future.
On Christmases past, on this Christmas year, on Christmases yet to come, I wish with all my heart
My soul would be some
for everyone,
let him see the joy.
hear the cheer and thrill the love
Of Christmas's
present
future
and
of Christmas's past.
A couple years ago, Danny and I began talking about writing something new, and it became do we want to do something totally original and have the risk of a total flop, or do we want to use familiar material and go with something that people already know going in, so we can be like, okay, we have them hooked with the story, now we can just put pretty music with it.
Yeah, I wasn't too set on one idea or the other, so I just kind of let him decide. And he had brought up the idea of doing a Christmas Carol, and it wasn't so much my love of the novel or Dickens or anything that made me really excited about it, but kind of just my love of Christmas in general. And I was, after that, I read the novel and got hooked on that idea.
When we discussed doing A Christmas Carol, we wanted to do something a little bit different with it. So we came up with a subplot that involves another character writing the story and reading it to his daughter. And that kind of helps us narrate through the show, but also gives the audience something different. So when they come, obviously they're seeing A Christmas Carol, but they're seeing A Christmas Carol in a slightly different light. The cool thing is, once we started working on it together, was a lot of the ideas that you see in the show now kind of came together, and they weren't exactly something we came up with. It was like, oh, you did that? Oh, well then, perfect, I'll do that. Because we were never in the same room when we were creating the show. He was on tour with Shrek, and I was doing various shows at Circus, so we really didn't come together until later, I guess it was that fall, right?
Yeah, after I'd returned from China over the summer with Shrek, we were finally in the same place, and it was only a couple months before we started rehearsing.
It's still not a final product, and that's kind of the cool thing about something new, is even now in rehearsals we're still making changes. I'm still cutting dialogue, adding new dialogue, stuff that sounds better. That's kind of the cool thing about it. Even from last year's presentation to this year's is almost, there's a lot of things that are different and still changing. Stuff that you may not want to change. I mean, even one of the big differences from this year from last year is we cut an entire character. There's an entire character gone, because while I really liked the idea, like they do in a soap opera, I just killed her off and actually ended up having a more powerful punch after the fact when I wrote the new dialogue.
Some of the changes I made were things that were wanting to happen naturally with the cast last year, and then after the fact I kind of realized that, if it wants to happen naturally and it's like not a mistake, then this is kind of the way it wants to be, and I'm not going to fight it. There are just tiny lyrical changes here and there, like just one word, because I use it too many times, like switching to a different word, and nothing too drastic though.
It was mostly song placement that changed this year. We did change up a few things just because it flowed better,
Yeah,
things
there
like
was
that.
flip-flops.
But the nice thing is he's kind of a genius when it comes to composing, so none of his stuff needed to change. A lot of my work needed to change, even though it's pretty much a straight adaptation, so I ended up changing some of the Dickens stuff because I was like, oh, that doesn't work as well as something that I might have come up with. A lot of the happy accidents came through auditions, and we're like, oh, actually, that's a great idea, like our Scrooge is fantastic. And he was not somebody we even knew when we started the project, actually. So we can't say that part was written for him, but I know the part of Marley was written for the actor portraying that. Fred and Young Scrooge was written with somebody in mind.
It's really brilliant to see the way Doug kind of takes this music that's not really written for his type of voice and kind of makes it his own. And now I wouldn't have it any other way. I love the way he's doing it. As a composer, I think my best work happens in a short amount of time, because there's no overthinking. It's just very intuitive. And that song in particular, I had written just one evening after I got home. I usually try and compose in the morning, so this happened late at night. And all the lyrics, all the musical material happened just kind of in one sitting. And it's not really related musically to a lot of other stuff in the show, which is actually a good thing at that point, because in that point in the show, it's kind of refreshing to hear something new and something different.
Well, I've done a few versions, the Leslie Bricusse version, and then also Phil McKinley's version, and they're both nice, and I enjoyed doing both of them. Something that I really wanted to do with ours was kind of focus on a lot of the characters that are going around Scrooge. A lot of the others focus on Scrooge, and I wanted to kind of focus a little bit more on the Cratchit family. That was kind of something that him and I talked about early on. Was there's such an interesting dynamic there, and why does Scrooge all of a sudden have this, feeling of like, oh my God, what have I been doing, my entire life? So that was something I think a lot of versions hadn't focused on, was a lot of the characters that surround him, and so that was something interesting for us. We also kind of wanted to make it a little darker, because it's not exactly a light-hearted piece. After all, Charles Dickens talks about how it is a ghost story, which is something Danny and I keep coming back to.
When we started working on it, I adamantly just stayed away from them, because I knew, like most composers do, that I would subconsciously derive material from that. I adamantly just refused to listen to those versions, just so I knew that I was doing kind of my own thing.
It's very cool and also very frightening. I think we could agree with that. There's moments where you feel like a complete genius, because you're like, wow, that worked so well. And then there's also those moments where you're like, wow, everybody in this room is definitely thinking, oh, he can't hack it, And it's really cool, because it is something brand new. And it's nice to be able to fully create it, because you take another piece that's been, licensed to you, and you can do only so much creation with it. But this, if you don't like something, you're gonna be like, oh, well, we can rework that. We can change that completely.
Like in any piece of music, and like any composer can tell you, just hearing their music come to life like that is just one of the greatest, things, one of the greatest feelings, whether you're getting paid for it or not. I've done more, composing for free than I have for money, and most of the rewarding experiences have been the free ones. Just hearing it. It's I don't know. It's kind of its own gift.
Theaters across the country do a Christmas Carol every single year, and some of them are their own versions, but some of them are licensed versions. And I would love ours to become a licensed version, because I think it's quite good. It has a lot of heart and has some great music, and he's done an incredible job with the music side of it. Thank you. You're welcome.
And so it was done. His wish was sent to the heavens, bringing in turn 3 spirits with wisdom to share, for this man to also bear, and he would soon learn to care. Little did I know that it would change the course of not only his life, would open his soul and allow his spirit to shine.
Papa, can you continue the story now?
I can. Oh, how you remind me of your mother. You look like her more and more every day.
Do you miss her?
I do.
Tell me about her.
Well, she was kind and caring. One of the most loving people in this whole wide world. She loved you most of all.
I wish she was still here.
As do I, Claire. As do I. Now, where were we? It was a great surprise to Scrooge to hear a hearty laugh. It was a much greater surprise to Scrooge to recognize it at his own nephew's, and to find himself in a bright, dry, gleaming room, with the Spirit standing smiling by his side, and looking at that same nephew with approving affability. "Ha ha ha!" laughed Scrooge's nephew.
Let's hear, but also hide from the sea. Oh, let's rhyme in more reason.
How about an owl?
But he has the same scowl. A pheasant. Less pleasant, but strikingly foul. What is the animal which I'm thinking? Each of you is warranted a guess. If ever in doubt, just shout something now. But this one's quite hard, I confess.
A rodent, I think.
Well, much less of a sting.
Perhaps of the swine.
Less gray and more pink. Maybe a stick. His kid does tend to blink.
Has he fangs?
That's kind of a costing you take.
What is the animal of which he is thinking? Haven't we guessed it yet?
Let's end this agree.
Not until we succeed. It's quite rare breed, I bet. A vulture.
That's culture, but us punched at the shoulder. That's horse. That's colored and possibly older.
Something with feathers.
His coat changes with the weather.
A donkey.
Less whips, but he's, he's an ass and whips are together. Not in your verbal jailer. Yes, it's
Much they saw and far they went, and many homes they visited, but always with a happy end. It was a long night for only a night, but Scrooge had his doubts of this because the Christmas holidays appeared to be condensed into the space of time they passed together.
Tell me, are spirits' lives short? My time on this earth is very brief. It ends tonight. Tonight? Tonight. And the time draws near.
The next spirit, when will it come? Spirit? Why must you leave me so soon? Spirit? No. I take it that I am in the presence of the spirit of Christmas yet to come. You are about to show me shadows of things that have not yet happened, but will happen in the time before us. Is that not so, Spirit? Spirit, I fear you more than any spectre that I have seen. Will you not answer me? Very well. Read on, Spirit. The night is passing fast and the time is precious to me. Read on.
No, I don't know anything about it. I only know he's dead.
When did he die?
Last night, I believe.
Spirit? Who died? Do I know this man?
Why, the matter with him? I never thought he'd die.
God knows.
Wonder what he's done with his money.
I haven't heard. Left it to his company, perhaps. I don't know, he hasn't left it to me.
I know them. Yes, I know them from... they have a familiar air.
Well, it's likely to be a cheap funeral, and I can't imagine anybody who'll go to it. Perhaps we should make up a party and volunteer.
Well, I don't mind going if lunch is provided, but I must be fed for all the trouble it's worth.
Yes, well, it matters little to me either way. I never wear black gloves and I never eat lunch. But I suppose I could offer to go if anybody else will.
Do they not have any sense of decency or decorum? What is this? Why am I seeing this?
Now open me bundle, old Joe, and tell me what you give me.
And what are we in? Bed curtains?
I beckon.
You don't mean to say you took him down, rings and all, with him still a lying there?
And why not? He wasn't apt to catch his death of cold without him.